Disler, and I am an MFA intern. And today we will be going through the award ceremony for Portals 2022 with our juror, Andrew Brandmeyer. Andrew is an oil painter and a professor at the Savannah College of Art and Design and has prepared a juror statement for us today. So Andrew, whenever you're ready, take it away.
All right. So yeah, I'll just kind of go through the juror statement a little bit. I'll try not to read it word for word, but just kind of riff on what I wrote here. First off, I thanked all of the artists who submitted to the exhibition. And when I say all the artists, I mean all of the artists, not just those who placed, because it really is an important and sometimes a challenging thing to put yourself out there as an artist. We tend to communicate visually, sometimes better than verbally. So it takes a lot it's a personal thing to put ourselves out there. So again, I just want to say thank you to everyone who submitted their work for everyone to see and for us to look at. And again, I'd like to thank the Maryland Federation of Art for the opportunity to act as a juror. I love getting the opportunity to do these things because it gives me the opportunity to see what type of art is happening in different regions. I mentioned there was over 350 entries to consider. And because after I looked at the work, I realized it was going to be even more challenging just because of how much successful work that was there. So I actually had to put in more time than I expected on this, which I'm fine with. But yeah, I was just blown away with the quality of the majority of the work. The theme, portals, when we think of portals, I don't know if I've got the actual definition correct in my head, but we think of a passageway as sort of an opening, all right? So I had mentioned in the statement that once I knew what the theme was before even seeing the work, I was going to have a lot of images of doors, of windows, of strong one-point perspective, which is great because, again, that's something that we would easily think of as a portal, but we can also conceptualize it as different experiences that people have transitioned through within their lives. So there, I knew that I was also going to be doing some sort of detecting of conceptual or thematically related elements within a lot of the work. With that being said, with there being a lot of similar literal imagery in the pieces, or as I was expecting and as I noticed, I then had to look for what I consider to be successful foundations in art, and this could be anything from the composition being balanced well, to color theory or color harmonies, to images that collect our attention with energy or any type of kinetic movement that the artist has described in the piece. So those were some of the things that I was looking for when going through this prolific amount of work. I had mentioned here that I studied all the submissions, like I just mentioned, looking for literal and conceptual indications of what could be considered a portal. And then from there, I just started diving in and started looking for pieces that I found to be successful in relating to portals and foundations of art making. Okay, let's see, did you just move this down? Oh, okay, you did. All right. I guess this will be parts that need to be edited. Let's see. Let me take a look at this real quick to remind myself what I wrote. Oh yeah, so to all the artists that submitted the work in here, when submitting work to shows, you don't always get in. I know this from experience. I've gotten the rejection letter more than I've gotten an acceptance letter when submitting to group shows throughout my lifetime. So one thing that you got to take into consideration is that I am one juror. I'm just one person. My thoughts on your work can differ greatly from me to the next person that looks at it. So like I mentioned in here, I may not have selected your work for entry into the show. Don't worry about that because you submit it to the next show, it may get in and it may sell right away.
No, I think that's incredibly important, okay, especially for younger artists who are just out of college or just starting to experiment with trying to participate in shows. It's always good to know that there's a lot of amazing work, and art is subjective. It's something we hear all the time.
Yeah, but and it's a great,
awesome reminder.
Yeah, and it's a great learning opportunity too, because you have the art making process, but then also along with art, if you want to share it with the community, you also have to put yourself out there and you have to submit the work. And you're going to be able to take criticism. You're going to have to be able to take criticism on your work. And again, that's just a great learning process for everyone, especially artists that are starting out. Yeah, so I guess that's all I have to say about my juror statement right now.
Awesome. So if you're ready, we can go into the honorable mentions, starting off with passing.
Okay, yeah. One piece, what really struck me about this piece is, it's obviously a train sitting there waiting to go, but it's suggesting movement. It's anticipating movement. And then looking at the figures inside this, we don't know them. We don't know them personally. We don't know their lives. So, I mean, we can only speculate about where they're going, where they're transferring to. Are they transferring to a doctor's appointment? Are they transferring to work? Are they going somewhere to pick their kids up from school? So this piece opens it up to a lot of interpretation and a lot of thought about what these people's different life experiences are and how we can group everyone into one situation while all these people have completely different lives, but they're all using this as a means of transportation or a way to get from point A to point B to go on about their day. So I thought this was a pretty good example or a way to conceptualize the idea of a portal. Great work, Dennis. I like this piece a lot.
All right, and so next up we have a path forward.
All right, yeah, this one initially struck me right away because of the color harmonies. I love the reds and the greens. I think that's a really nice balance. I love the vertical lines on both the left side of the rock formation and then our right side, which is the tree. And again, it balances itself out really well in terms of perspective, because we've got everything that's a little bit larger, a little more detailed in the foreground. And then as it travels back into the distance, we've got the idea of sfumato, or, an aggressive sort of aerial perspective placed into a small picture plane. So this piece, it's 28 by 32, which isn't a really small piece. Let's say it's kind of a medium to small piece, but it's monumental in the way it depicts space. And it also has that strength in terms of energy and movement that's created by the strong 1-point perspective. And the detailing, the texturing that's implied here, I think is beautiful. Not saying that it's sitting there and painstakingly trying to render something as hyper realistic, but the way that the textures are suggested works well to indicate that type of depth and enables us to understand something that we've probably experienced in nature. So that's what really had me gravitate towards this piece.
Yeah, awesome. All right, next up we have 10:28 a.m.
Yep. I really like this piece, and I like, this came in as a series. I believe Rebecca had 3 of these pieces that she submitted, and instantly they grabbed my attention, and instantly I wanted these in the show. What I like about this, first off, is the simplicity of perspective and being able to utilize that in art to create a strong piece that shows a great amount of depth in a big open space, while keeping the literal imagery, or the literal imagery simplistic. Sometimes you don't have to go all out and spend hours and hours and hours doing detailing and refining and defining work. You can get a strength in terms of the monumentality of the image put down on paper really quick, just by understanding that idea of moving objects within the distance or within space. What else I really liked about this piece in terms of the foundations was a strong contrast. That's another reason why this piece popped out, to go from the extreme lights and extreme darks very rapidly, but also still maintain those values that travel in between those extreme lights and extreme darks. So I think it's a really good layout of those values. It's got some nice blending to it as well, but you can also see the mark making within that blending. And one thing I really like about seeing a sort of juxtaposition of mark making and smooth blending is that you can see the artist's role, the artist's hand within the work. So it also helps make the piece a little more personal and a little more individual. I also like this sort of lonely aspect to it. I don't know why, but I've been into dark art for a very long time. And this piece has sort of a darkness and emptiness, a loneliness to it, if we think about the feeling that we get from it. And it made me think of Hopper's work right away with this very strong light. And this, even though there's not a figure in here like a lot of Hopper's work, there's still a voyeuristic quality where we're looking into someone else's world, someone else's experiences, and then trying to relate that to our own. So beautiful piece. Great work, Rebecca.
Yeah.
I love this one, and I love the other two also you submitted.
All right, so then the next one that we're going to be looking at is called Steps.
Great. So from what I'm seeing here, we have some sort of clear awning that's looking over top or laid over top of some stairs that are maybe going downward. It's kind of hard for me to tell, but I'm guessing they're going downward, possibly to a subway station. Again, that, I can think of that as a portal, a means of transportation. But it also, what I really liked about this is the way the glass obscured this pathway. And I considered it as a way of abstraction, while holding on to the idea of a portal, using that literal idea of traveling and things going away in space. We also had this sense of abstraction. And it also stops us, the audience, from being able to actually go in and experience what we see through it. And it creates this want or this need for that experience, yet we're kind of held back by this platform and this barrier that's between us and that. So I felt it created this want, this yearning to experience it even more, which kept my attention the whole time. And the way that it's the image is cropped and laid out, I think it creates sort of a minimalist abstraction, when we take something that's man-made and a lot of thought was put into it, just to simplify it and look at it in a way like this makes it more abstract and helps us to throw our own experiences into the piece. Awesome, Marilyn. All right, so what I really enjoyed about this piece from Wynn Redman is the use of mixed media in it, the layering that it produces, and also the energy and a kind of a kinetic feel of motion. I think of I think about the idea of portals, and I think of movement. Again, I mentioned transitioning from point A to point B, or from one place to another, and I get that feel, especially with around the center of the image, where we've got these curvilinear lines that sort of indicate and pressure us and move us to this black hole in the center, which also makes me think of energy as well. I may have mentioned this in other pieces before, but this is a piece where I would view from 15 feet away, find it to be successful at that distance, but then also be overjoyed when I get closer to it and get to experience the more fine details and subtleties that you might not notice from steps back. It's one of those pieces that you get to explore for a length of time, rather than just coming to an immediate conclusion when seeing it, because there's so many different layers and subtleties and transitions and textures involved in the piece that help support the strength of its final outcome. So the color balance is it's subtle, but it works well. And the weight transitions, the composition, even though this is a abstracted piece, fit really well on the picture plane. So love this piece. Great work, Wynn.
Up, we have our first of the jurors' choices. We have Portal of Time.
Richard Helmick. I love the choice of color. I think that balances really well. You obviously have a good understanding of some color theory. Again, I love the movement in pieces like this. We've got a lot of repeating curvilinear lines, a lot of circles, but the layering works well. The diminishing scale of these work well. We get the idea of time. We get the idea of how time can affect us or humans personally, with the way that Richard has used the clocks as the eyes in the portrait. I like the movement with the way the head is turned in more of a 3/4 sort of view, because it gives us, again, more of an idea of distance set right in the center of that composition, when everything else is laid out pretty symmetrically on there, outside of the clock's movement at the bottom. So I love the mark making that indicates the value or the textures or the facial hair around the portrait, because not only does that indicate subcutaneous landmarks or features within a figure, but it also directs us to the other mark making that's situated around the side. So again, I think it's important when I'm looking at a drawing or a painting or a sculpture that I don't get too fixated on one particular spot if it's not put out there as something that needs to be a focal point right off the bat. I can focus on the figure, but I can also enjoy all the movement that goes around, and it gives me the idea of movement through time, especially with the literal imagery of the clocks at the bottom. A very energetic piece, well-balanced, great color, great movement. Nice work, Richard.
Absolutely love it. Moving on, we have Portal of Saved Souls.
Yeah, and this one is kind of along the similar lines of the piece that I chose for the what was that called, the runners-up awards, or the honorable mentions. So again, we've got great aerial perspective in here. You know, we've got strong detail in the foreground, and it slightly diminishes as it goes back. We're only working on a 14-inch by 20-inch picture plane. So to be able to get that sort of monumental space put in place is very, very important, because it opens up the plane, it makes it more breathable, it makes it more comfortable to look at. Because again, this is showing nature, and we've, as humans, experienced nature. We are nature. So to see something that's very easily relatable and able to experience in a small format, I think helps the strength of the image and will draw the audience's attention to it. I love the variety of textures and forms within here. We've got the natural elements, you know, the rocks, the texture of the barks, the leaves, which is beautiful layering through value, set in the foreground leading into the midground. But then in the center, we have this sort of fantastical, surreal depiction of these orbs or these colorful circles of light floating around the tree, which is something that I don't think a lot of us have experienced in nature. It would be a pretty interesting thing to see. So to throw that fantastical, surreal element into something that we can look out our window and experience on a daily basis makes this more inviting and personal. The balance is strong, the use of color is strong. And again, even the upper left corner where the light slowly fades away. And again, we get that idea that the Italians gave to us through sfumato, which is taking that aerial or atmospheric perspective and condensing it into a piece, adds to the strength. And all it takes is just a little top corner with that suggestion to really make the piece flow and sing. It's difficult sometimes when we're working with nature or with, let's say, trees. You know, I do a lot of architectural illustration for residential work or businesses, whatever. And there's always trees that are kind of blocking the way when I'm doing some of the renderings of the sites that are already there. And it's hard sometimes to make the compositions work with those big breaks in the page, but the way it's balanced here with just the amount of textures and the way the light travels slowly around the trees, like what an organic object, makes those breaks in the composition actually sit well and flow. Nice job, W. Yeager.
Yeah, absolutely wonderful. Alrighty, our next piece, I really hope I pronounced this correctly, but Lenoir R03-22-19-07 AD.
Yeah, figurative art has always been something that I've, been really in love with and tuned with. So I love to see in contemporary art the use of nudes in it. One thing that's really strong about this piece is you have, in terms of movement, you have that fisheye lens sort of feel to it. I'm not sure if they use the fisheye lens on this, but either way, you get that feeling of movement and life traveling beyond the picture. It gives us the idea that there's more going on outside of what we can see, not just in the center. And I started gravitating to this type of photography or even video work, I would say in like the mid 90s, when fisheye lenses were used heavily in skateboarding videos. That was my first real introduction to fisheye lenses. So automatically it gives me that feeling of being excited of seeing something for the first time that was aggressive and energetic, and something that was independent like skateboarding. I get those feelings just from the fisheye lens. So already, even without the figure, I'm already gravitating towards this piece. We've got the very strong perspective of the staircase going from foreground to midground. The staircase travels back up into a room or a floor that we can't see, again, adding to the monumentality of the image, suggesting more open space beyond what we can experience firsthand here. And then when you take the figure who is looking directly at us, the audience, we get this sort of confrontation happening right away. Also, not only is the gaze confrontational, but the way the figure is placed directly in the center of the composition, right in the center, in between those perspectives, those orthogonals that are running back into the distance. And the vanishing point is roughly right around the top of the skull. So we are forced not only from the figure's gaze, but from the layout of the interior space and architecture, we're forced to give our attention to this figure. And then not only the gaze, the perspective, the eye level, the vanishing point, but the fact that the figure is nude also creates more of a confrontation as well. We're forced to deal with things that are taboo. We're forced to deal with the uncomfortableness of not having clothes on. It's right there, it's in our face. So I love that aspect of this piece. I think there were 3 or 4 other ones that Dan submitted that were just beautiful images too. You know, a lot of these artists, I wish I could select all of their work that they submitted, but we did have to keep it down a little bit, you know, and try to do 1 or 2 per artist. So yeah, and using a pinhole camera, that's great to be able to use that technique and get a really strong image from that. I love the quality, the sort of archival quality of the pinhole cameras. It's really great. So all around great movement, very exciting piece, Dan. Thank you for sharing this with us. This is awesome.
Absolutely wonderful. And then with this one, we have Tea in Hanoi with Visions of Edward Hopper, which I think is really funny because with the piece that Becca Watson submitted with 10:28 a.m., you had likened that to Edward Hopper's work. And so I think that's really neat that we see this guy coming in with more Edward Hopper.
Yeah, I guess the specter or the ghost in the background may be Edward Hopper. I'm not sure, but the figure sitting in the cafe or at the table, that figure is not looking at us. It's looking away. Hopper, or the ghost or whatever, is looking away from us. The collie down at the bottom is also looking away from us. So we had talked about confrontation in the last piece. This piece is less confrontational. We get to be a voyeur. We get to look in on someone else's world undetected. All right. And that makes it a little easier for us to examine because we're not under any pressure to look at this. All right. We're able to investigate it. We're able to explore it without any preconceived notions or indications of how we're supposed to feel or that we are not welcome here. It's just open to us. I love the color in this. I love the arrangement of the stools in the foreground to help balance that out. The movement of the perspective, you know, which is the perspective is loose in this piece, but the idea is still there. It may not be 100% spot on, but I also like when artists choose not to be 100% mathematically correct in their work because we have tools that can do that. We have cameras that can capture that. So if an artist has carefree about their approach to it, it's something that I love to see. As a draftsman and a painter myself, I find myself sometimes trying too hard, and that can make the drawing look static. Now, I'm not saying that Guy didn't try hard at this piece, but I love the looseness, the free-flowing use of the idea of perspective in here to create that distance. And I'm a big dog fan, I'm not gonna lie. So I saw that dog right away, and that also helped draw me into the picture. I also love the looseness of the text that's put on the menu boards in the background. I don't speak German, so I can't read it. I think it's in German, but the way it's laid out also helps create distance and visual interest and weight and gravity in those areas around the figure as well. So great range of value. I love the painterly aspect of the mark making on the floor. It says collage and oil painting. I'm not sure what areas are actually the collage, which is kind of cool in mixed media when you can't really decipher what is what. Everything just sits in there naturally and harmonizes with the other mediums in there really well. So that way we get that comfortable flow and being able to look at a piece without our eyes getting stopped anywhere. We can experience the whole thing because of the professional use of these different media. Great painterly aspects to it, and yeah, everything else. Real successful piece, Guy.
And then we have finishing us up strong is Beyond the Clouds.
Yeah, I think this was the only full fabric piece that I chose in here. And what grabbed me right off the bat was, you know, it's got a sort of minimalist display to us. You know, it's set in a perfect rectangle, straightforward piece. It's not showing us foreground. It's not showing us background. But the way that the different angles are set back and forth and moving almost like static. So what really drew me to this piece was the movement created by these different angles going back and forth. It reminded me of static. It reminded me of movement of water. So that helped me with the idea of a portal, of movement, of something transitioning from one stage to the next. And that's what I get out of this. The texture is really strong. The subtle color is really strong. It's not oversaturated, which is something I really, really like. That's personally something I really, really like in art. It's got a really good sort of soft feel, but it also has this aggressive texture in this movement to it. So I thought, even though that this piece was obviously something that was rigorous and time consuming to put together, it's got this simple sort of soft, inviting quality to it as well. Yeah, I love this piece. Great work.
To kind of loop back to what you had to say in the beginning in your artist statement, we want to thank everyone for participating. And like you said, putting yourselves out in a potentially vulnerable position and sharing, 350 different works, which is absolutely phenomenal.
And I think there was more than 350, and the majority of the work was great.
Yeah.
So thanks a lot, guys. You made this really tough on me.
But yeah, so we want to say thank you to everyone and be on the lookout for more of our upcoming shows. We do have some that are in person. We have some that are like this one that are fully digital. But yeah, we hope that you have a wonderful day. And thank you so much, Andrew, for your participation. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And if any of the artists that placed in the exhibition or that didn't place in the exhibition ever want to shoot me an email or reach out to me, talk about their work, I always leave my door open to students all the time. I love discussing art. So feel free to reach out if you ever want to talk about these pieces or whatnot. And I've got a pretty busy teaching schedule, but I can always find time to talk with you guys about whatever. My email is abrand82@gmail.com. Thanks again, guys. This was a lot of fun. It really was. Great work. Keep submitting work to shows. Keep putting yourself out there. Keep learning from one another. And thanks again. This was great.
Hope you have a good one.
Thanks, Paige.